Today, I woke up feeling sick. I'm in withdrawal because I had so much fun playing Project Loki last night that it's the only thing that I want to do or play or think about. The competitive games that have dominated the market for so long have felt so stale that I was genuinely shocked at how happy I felt after my first few matches of Project Loki. This game is in a pre-alpha, as they're calling it, so thanks so much to the devs for even giving me the chance to playtest this game so I could tell you guys all about it. I'll talk more about Theorycraft, the developers of this game, later in the video, but first I just want to talk about the gameplay, because that's what really matters. The B-roll behind me here in this video is going to be very limited because I'm not allowed to share my gameplay like I usually would be able to because of the fact that this game is in a pre-alpha. So I'm basically limited to what Theorycraft put in their announcement video. So just bear that in mind if your dopamine receptors aren't firing correctly or something. This video is really just going to be me explaining what this game feels like to play and my opinions on it. If you want a basic idea on how Project Loki plays, it's being called Apex meets League of Legends meets Smash. After playing it the other night, I totally understand these comparisons, but I'm going to try to do an even better job of kind of painting the picture of what this game actually feels like to play. Let's start with the Apex comparison. I feel like Loki is being compared to Apex because of the fast-paced, team-based combat, but also the fact that we've mostly been playtesting on Battle Royale, so you can also draw the Battle Royale comparison too. I personally would not call Project Loki a Battle Royale. We are in the early playtesting phase and there's already two different game modes, one not being Battle Royale, and the size of the lobbies are not like 100-player lobbies like you expect in Warzone or something. The games are not that big, so don't think huge, large-scale Battle Royale. If you've seen this channel before, you know I'm pretty stoked about that. Not everything has to be a Battle Royale. The team-based style of combat in this game does really remind me of Apex though, which is super weird because this game is not like a first-person shooter at all. As you can see, it's like this isometric top-down view type thing. So it's weird, but the combat does remind me of Apex a lot. Just like in Apex, I felt like the most important thing between winning and losing a fight was how coordinated me and my team played together as far as sticking to a single target and sticking on top of each other. That was like the most important thing between winning and losing. The better we played together, the better we were, and that was a great feeling. Very rarely were you able to pull off like 1v2s or 1v3s, but it did happen on rare occasion. But team-based gameplay was like the main thing that you could do to win, it felt like, at least in the testing stages here. I feel like the League of Legends comparison is very visually obvious after looking at the 30 seconds of gameplay or whatever we have from the trailer, but to be honest with you, after playing the game, it doesn't really play like League of Legends. You control your character in this game with WASD, so automatically, mechanically, this game doesn't play like League at all outside of using your mouse to aim skill shots. You can view the character that you play as very similar to the way that you view a champion in League of Legends, I will say. Like every character in this game has a passive ability and you can buy an item from a shop and equip them, but you don't like visually see the item on them. It just increases the character's stats, if that makes sense. So in that way, the game is like League of Legends. This game is being developed by ex-Riot employees, so it would make sense that they've drawn some inspiration from League after working on it for so many years. Personally, I love that it kind of just feels like they managed to pull some good parts from League, but managed to make the gameplay feel completely unique to League. I think that's very important, so that they don't just feel like another MOBA clone, which this game doesn't feel or play like at all. The last game comparison they make in the announcement video to this is Super Smash Bros, which I guess I kind of understand. I definitely think it's the weakest of the comparisons because I think this comparison is just kind of drawn from how you traverse the map and the fact that you can knock players off the map. So if dying to the arena is a Super Smash Bros quality, then yeah, sure, I guess the game's like Super Smash Bros, but otherwise not really. Personally, while playing Loki, I was able to make two more game comparisons that I thought were much closer than the Super Smash Bros. Comparison. The first game it reminded me of was Spellbreak. This Battle Royale is no longer around, but in that game, you could loot these abilities that could be used on any characters, and there's kind of a system like that in this game, and it reminded me of it a lot, and a lot of the looting stuff from that Battle Royale remind me a lot of the little bit of the Battle Royale mode that we played in this game, if that makes sense. From a Battle Royale standpoint, it kind of reminds me more of, aesthetically at least, Spellbreak than it does Apex, but the gameplay reminds me of Apex. Hope that makes sense. I'm playing a pre-alpha, so the art and aesthetic don't really mean much yet, I think, but it does kind of give me Spellbreak vibes. So take that with what you will. The other game that this reminded me of, and this is not supposed to be an insult, is Battlerite, which I played quite a bit of this game when it came out, and it was fun for a few days. Thankfully, this game, even in its pre-alpha, has managed to put out a more fun and fluid game to play, so like I said, not an insult, and anyway. Loki and Battlerite's combat in some ways do kind of feel similar to me, but I have to say that Loki's combat is just way more complex and has way more depth than I think Battlerite's ever did. I think Loki will probably long outlive and outlast anything Battlerite ever did. So that's kind of it for comparisons that I can give between this new, fun, competitive game that you're not allowed to play and older competitive games that you probably have played or at least heard of. I hope I painted at least somewhat of a decent enough picture for you. The last time I was this excited for a new game to come out was probably the Valorant release, and honestly, I think I'm more excited for Loki than I was Valorant. We get new, fresh, competitive games so rarely, it's crazy. Valorant wasn't even fresh either. We just out here starving. I wanted to do a wishlist video, but I'm realizing that's not possible because one, I can't share what's already in the game with you for the most part, and I also don't know what's going to be in the game after it finishes coming out because it's in a pre-alpha after all. So what I am going to do is talk in the game in generalities and just kind of talk about what I would like to see this game and developer do in the future. I feel like multiple game modes is a must, not just with this game, but with any game ever. All games should have more than one game mode for you to play. It appears that the developers, Theorycraft, do plan on having multiple game modes in the game, so that's awesome, but I just cannot stress that enough. So many games release themselves balanced around one single game type that it's like they're trying to pigeonhole themselves into becoming an esport or something. Just because it worked for League of Legends to have one single game type 14 years ago doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Thankfully, the devs at Theorycraft seem to realize that just building an amazing and fun game to play first should be the priority, and then you can deal with all the esports crap later if it comes to that. They've kind of said so themselves on Twitter already, really. Shout out Joe Tung. Best Joe I met since Joe Mama. Community-driven esports scenes are better like 100% of the time anyways. Unless a game genuinely gets like too big like League of Legends did, then the developer can step in, but otherwise, let's just not have another Overwatch League situation, alright? Speaking of developers being clueless, one thing that I think developers love to do in the present day and is a giant waste of their marketing budget is to pay streamers to play their games for a few hours. I know for a fact, getting Ludwig and Charlie and Shroud and Summit to play your game for a few hours is not cheap. Yet for some reason, any game with a budget throws money at them to play their game on stream for a couple hours. Yeah, it'll give your game a little bit of exposure. In 99% of the cases, the streamer plays your game for the amount of hours you paid him to, then he logs off and never plays the game again. Do you know how bad that makes your game look? It's like paying for advertising and getting negative advertising. Viewers aren't that stupid. If a streamer is paid to play a game, plays it for the allotted amount of time, and even if the streamer is like, oh my god guys, this was the best game like ever that I love so much, if they never play it again, the viewer is going to realize that the game is trash. Even if the game isn't trash, the viewer is going to perceive it as trash because they never played it again unless they were being paid money to play the game. It makes your game look bad, and it's just like a gamble that you shouldn't take. Just get passionate people to make content for your game. There's hundreds of creators out there who are capable of making good content, who would be in love with the idea of working with a new game or a game studio to help get a new game off the ground and help make marketing for them for essentially free. Basically, don't spend 6 figures marketing with Twitch streamers and buy a commercial or something. The character design in Loki felt pretty good, especially for an alpha from a gameplay standpoint. I didn't feel like anything was super over or underpowered. I just don't want to see this game turn into Overwatch everybody press the ult ability at the same time game, and I'm not saying that the game is there, but let's not even start going down that path, you know? Not everyone's ult should be some ultra impactful insta-kill the entire enemy team every 30-second cooldown button, you know? Not every ultimate ability needs to be that crazy. Keeping skill expression and ways to actually mechanically outplay your opponent, I think, is super important in any competitive game, and you shouldn't just have an ultimate kill button ever. One last thing I want to talk about is the difficulty of the character that you choose to play. I think one thing that League of Legends has done very well over the years but isn't really talked about too much is the difficulty range on their champions. There's very easy champions to play and very hard champions to play. There's champions in that game that are so easy to play, like Garen. It's so fucking brain dead, dude. It makes me sick to my stomach. But I also understand how important it is for champions like Garen to be in the game. No matter how large the skill gap gets in the game throughout the years, with easier champions to play like Garen in the game, it lets people learn the champion just about instantly and be able to focus on everything else around them in the game, so they can actually learn the game itself and not necessarily the character that you're playing. That is why, years after the release of League, noobs getting on champions like Garen is still so important. In Loki, there's a character that I was calling Call of Duty Man because he be shooting, but basically, he felt so much easier to pick up and play than all the other characters, and I felt like I was being way more effective on him just about instantly, but his skill ceiling also felt much lower. You need to have characters in your game like Riven or Akali from League of Legends that have insanely high skill ceilings, so the people who are addicted to your game have something to never endlessly work on and to always improve at. So you do need to have both, and it's not an easy balance, but it seems like the developers are smart enough to realize this already, because of the 3 or 4 characters that I got to play in the playtest, there was already a pretty wide skill range between Call of Duty Man and some of the other players that I got to play as. Speaking of developers, that was the last thing that I wanted to talk about in this video. The lead developers come from Riot, as I previously mentioned in this video, and to be honest, in their initial presentation of the game, they kinda come off as Riot Jr., and I don't mean that as an insult. For the first piece of media ever for a studio, it felt very, very polished and professional, and like I could already trust them as a studio just instantly. I'm sure a whole team and crew of people were behind making that video sound good because that's life, but I couldn't help but love the message that the developers put across in the video. It was like genuinely a heartwarming message that they delivered to me, and I drank the Kool-Aid. I can't help but root for these guys, and selfishly, as somebody coming from a game that is desperately in need of a spiritual successor, maybe these guys will be really successful and one day they could make a third-person shooter that could capture the essence of guns. Currently, my plan is to continue being very, very addicted to Project Loki until the developers decide to make me the freak of this game, and then I'm gonna take my freak ass right to the game studio and work my magic into talking some developers into remaking Guns the Duel for us, boys. I think it can work. On a final and more serious note, I appreciate what the developers have made so far in this game. I genuinely think it's going to be a very, very good game. One last time, I just want to give a special thanks to Theorycraft for getting me into the playtest. I know you have something special here, and I think the game's a blast. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Peace.